And who were Cumann na mBan?
Cumann na mBan was an organisation of women founded in 1914 as part of the Irish volunteer movement, the Irish Nationalist Volunteer Movement. They were an auxiliary committee. They went on through the political events from 1916 to 1921. There was a split in 1921, and at the apex, at the period of the truce, if you like, in 1921, they claimed to have a membership of around 10,000 women. But by the time we come to the break in the Civil War, within a year, it has been reduced to a few hundred. The organisation, that's that small few hundred, went with the Republican side. They were anti-treaty. And so they had moved away from the Free State. They absolutely did not recognise the Free State. And they were part of that movement. So by 1925, they were part of the anti-Free State Republican movement, which was also starting to splinter. Like by 1926, it splinters even more. But it's splintering, and that's another story. But it's splintering. But but by 1924, they are what I call the third Cumann na mBan, because the first organisation was 1914. They split when John Redmond encouraged the volunteers to go away. That was the first split. Then they formed a new organisation, which was the second Cumann na mBan, which then split at the treaty. And by 1925, we're looking at the second generation of women. It's a totally new generation. Women who have been embittered because they were interned in the Civil War and they're very angry, and women who have political beliefs as well. So there's all of that, and they are the third Cumann na mBan. And that's who founded Easter Lily. Now, just to point out that when they founded Easter Lily, Countess de Markovitz has left the organisation to join Fianna Fáil. So she was not involved at any point with the Easter Lily, neither were Fianna Fáil.
The two symbols were viewed as belonging to two distinct cultures, one imperial and one republican, but they do have parallels. Could you outline those?
Well, the parallels comes back again to Madame Guerin, who I mentioned earlier, who had the idea of the poppy. And she made hers in linen. They were made in linen and sheep lawn. So, so one was more expensive than the other. And she came to London with the idea. And it snowballed from there. But she was the woman. She was the originator of this idea. And then the Republican Lily, which in my talk tonight I will talk about it, how between 1926 and 1935, this simple idea of selling flags on Easter Sunday, and they were paper flowers that were Easter lilies, how the simple idea over 8 years slowly took on a political dimension. And by 1934, it was established as the Republican symbol for Easter. Not an Irish symbol, but an Irish Republican symbol. Very distinct. And the Fianna Fáil party, as I said already, were not involved with this. None of the major political parties were involved in the Easter Lily because it was on the margins. On the margins with the Republican movement. But as the Republican movement itself fragmented, they still used the Easter Lily. So that when you come to 1969, you have, the pennies and the stickies. Yeah. I won't go into that. But, so they're claiming both sides in that particular group. But we're looking at constant splits and fragmentation, but it's there, and it's the Irish Republican symbol created by these women. And it was almost accidental. Mm-hmm. Like if they sat down to think about it, I don't know what they would have done. How will we symbolise Easter? And then when De Valera, which I will talk about tonight, how De Valera he totally wrested the commemoration of Easter from the marginalised Republicans, and he put the Fianna Fáil stamp on it.
Both symbols were used in the creation of self-identity, and both were designed and used by women. Why do you think women were charged with this particular responsibility around commemoration?
I think for commemoration, like Madame Guerin, it was a mixture of families who were in poverty, women and children in poverty, and it was a practical solution, but it was also the empathy and the emotional, and how to support, and men who had lost limbs, and it was that level of the practical with the understanding that something must be done, and she brought that with her. And with the women of 1926, nobody charged them with that responsibility. As I said, it was almost by accident that the Easter Lily became the symbol it did, because they had no money and they went with the idea.
It was organic or practical.
Oh yes, but within a year or two, within 6 weeks of the idea, somebody suddenly decides, well, hold on a minute, this is Easter Sunday, let's do this with it, and I'll talk about it later because it takes too long now, but let's do this with it, and then slowly it becomes a statement of intent. Yeah, that's a little bit strong, but that's what it was, very slowly. But it took 8 years for it to become that statement of intent. It was a long, because the IRA didn't support them, and Sinn Féin was not part of the Easter Lily campaign either. absolutely weren't there. It was Cumann na mBan, and then eventually the IRA, and then they started Republican committees to set up the commemorations all over the country. And that was why De Valera had to wrest it from them, because it was getting a bit too powerful for him.
We're nearly 85 years on since, I suppose, the inception or the first use of both symbols. Why do you think both symbols are still so politically charged after all this time on? And what is the key to their endurance?
I think, well, because I'm a good age myself, apart from the history and the living in Dublin and Kildare for most of my life, I think that what has happened is that it has been distorted by propaganda. The issue has been distorted by propaganda. The poppy was always supported. Like in the first 8 years, they raised £32,000 compared to the Easter lily, which they raised £900. And that is big. It's a big. There's a big difference there. And the poppy, as I was growing up, there was no big issue about what you wore, right? Some people wore it, some people didn't. Republicans, this movement of Republicans protesting and taking poppies, that still went on. But the propaganda, I'd say since probably 1969, 1970, it then developed or was devised or turned into an issue, which it never was. They invented the issue. And then these symbols were used to try and create who we were, instead of leaving the symbols as they were. And they didn't develop, up to that point, they were developing organically. After 1969, 1970, the whole thing changed. Yeah, so it's...
Dr. Matthews, thank you very much for coming along and giving us some insight into the Easter lily and the poppy, and thanks very much. Thank you.